is a project that was curated at McGill in October 2015, 16, I guess. So we started with the motivation that in international law, there have existed manuals that explain um, the existing law that applies to certain activities, whether they are military activities or whether they are just activities such as space activities or, let's say, activities in the high seas involving the loss of sea convention. So the objective and motivation really was to bring about a team of experts, leading global experts, representing major nations that exist on this planet today, gathering experts from all around and coming together to arrive at the word of law as it exists. So the core, if I may tell you, the most that we have struggled with, and also something that has been the core of the MILAMOS project is consensus building. So everything that we have agreed to, everything that you see in the now published McGill Manual Volume 1, and also you'll see in Volume 2, is the core idea of consensus. So all of these experts, now about, I think, 40 experts and 28 to 30 core experts who have put in their sweat and blood into this, had to arrive at a point that the language, let's say, about space resources or what constitutes space activities, right? What is the law on one particular topic? And we have 52 relevant topics. And what is the law? What is the wording that everybody can agree to and say that this is a definitive yes on the legal analysis and legal conclusion of that particular topic. So MILAMOS stands for the McGill Manual on International Law, applicable to military uses of outer space. So while we do say military uses of outer space, military activities take place both in peaceful and non-peaceful scenarios. So what we have tried to focus on is really that we have tried to focus on the peaceful times and the times of rising conflict. We stop the focus of the manual at the point where it becomes uh, a conflict situation, where the states have declared war. So we haven't dealt with international humanitarian law in focus or in particular. We do have analyses drawn from international humanitarian law or some legal analogies drawn, but in totality, generally speaking, we don't borrow concepts or we don't discuss, or the focus of the manual is not international humanitarian law. We stop at the times of rising conflict. So the motivation really was to gather all the as many experts from around the world and describe what the law is today. Again, there is also another motivation to cater to a public which needs this manual, right? So I'm sure you'll raise this question in what's the coming questions, but it really is to cater to an audience that has to make decisions, that has to understand law, that has to apply that law during when things are actually going down. So we can say there are two core motivations. First is the common denominator factor, that consensus on 52 rules. And second is to have a ready reference for all the people who want to use space and understand how space law works and applies to their space activities. While we were in this exercise of curating or drafting this manual, things were happening in the world, and they have been very interesting to observe from while we are working on this project. There are also things which are very important and perhaps, uh, activities that would define the course of law in years to come. So those activities were going down. So for example, let's say the testing of anti-satellites, right? Weapons, or let's say the entire debate on space resources and commercial utilization of space resources. So we have seen a couple of legislation coming from different countries about space resources, or we have seen a couple of tests happening from India or Russia or China about regarding the anti-satellite weapons. So while we were doing this, it was also happening right there and then. So we did realize that the exercise that we are doing, that we are engaged in, is so much more important that we really realize, because actors, when I say actors, I say states. And by states, I mean countries, let's say the US or Russia or Canada. And also their private entities, for example, SpaceX or many other space companies that are involved in conducting space activities need to know what the law is. Because what we now see in public domain is a lot of literature that is coming and is being put forward, not only just like literature, but also unilateral actions that are being put forward in the global domain, which are strictly speaking not in the interpretation of the law. So what is the need? The need really is that somebody needs to say what the law is, so that it is out there for the public to understand, oh, this is the clarity on law, and this activity falls within the domain or the scope of law, and this falls out, right? So while we have published the volume 1 of the manual, and I understand it is very dry and very cutting to the chase and saying what the law is, but the real meat and real substance of the manual would be the forthcoming commentaries. And that is where a lot would also be revealed in terms of what are the difficulties when we apply, let's say, one particular statement on interference, or what is the difficulty when we apply space resources, and how has states acted so far, and how do space actors from across the domain can act, and what are the legal limits. So where do we go from here is a really interesting question, in terms of, first, we do need to know, and all of the space actors also do need to know, where do we stand at the moment, right? And once we do know where do we stand at the moment, we do know what our paths are. Where are the deviations in law? Where could the course of law go in coming future, right? So if before Milamos, I would dare to say, before Milamos, there was and there is a lot of literature out there, where if an actor were to read, or if an actor were to just Google for sake, or get into an analysis, there is a lot of literature which would point you to different directions as to, oh, this may also be right, that may also be right. But now we have an authoritative statement coming from world-leading experts who have consensually agreed that this is the law. That although Outer Space Treaty gives you a lot, but then there are nuances which are not 100% clear. And that is where Milamos and the McGill Manual comes in. So where do we go from here is really, first we need to understand where we are, and then we can decide the course of action. Where can we go? Whether do we want to go in that direction or not? So it really more is about the lex lata, what we call the law as is, and clarifying what the law currently is, which has been the fundamental exercise of the MILAMOS project. The key takeaways, I think, like, from a very, very general point of view speaking, now you have a ready reference. You don't have to engage a lawyer, or you don't have to necessarily get in touch with whoever is the legal authority, but you do have a ready reference to understand at your own comfort, and legally broken down in simple language as to what the law is, what is permissible, what is not, and what is the gray area, and what are the challenges, right? So from very generally speaking, that is one of the key takeaways, that private actors now have a ready reference. Second, I would also say, now that in whatever way, in how much ever we understand this contribution to be in global domain, states also have that clear statement, and states also have that ready reference to understand whether what a private actor from their territory is trying to do, whether it's allowed by international law, first, what are the limits, and second, whether that legal limit or legal understanding has been incorporated within the domestic legislation and national jurisdiction. And if there is any deviation or if there is any um, lapse or a loophole, then the states would now have that understanding and that really a tool to aid them to understand what is really missing. So while there may not be a direct impact or a key takeaway to private operators or private industry, but then it definitely is going to, I think we feel confident that this is definitely going to aid in, activities that would be taken in legal compliance and in an orderly manner. Speak to that question in many ways, uh, from a MILAMOS construct and beyond a MILAMOS construct as well. From generally speaking, from a beyond a MILAMOS construct, I would say that this is the time to get involved in space and realize interest and what your stakes are in outer space. Because things are getting very busy, things are getting very populated, things like interest are maturing at much faster pace, and states who have not yet realized or unfortunately don't have the resources to realize the full potential of outer space and space activities should now invest their time, resources, and everything to really fruition and see what outer space has to offer and capture that interest. Now, having said that, Outer Space Treaty already does protect and captures particularly interest of those who have not or were not or who have not been or will not be the spacefaring nations in the coming times, right? So Outer Space Treaty in that way is a very beautiful instrument that captures not only the space powers, but captures the interest and protects the interest of almost everybody on planet Earth, right? Almost every state. So that is why we see a lot of obligation in the treaty, which talk about states and not state parties, which have implication much beyond just the contracting states. But it ensures freedom of exploration for every state that is on Earth and will be on Earth, right? So in terms of that, generally speaking, this is the time to realize. In terms of what Milamos has done to them, I would say, again, there is different answers. One of them would be we have tried to, and we are still trying to engage as many states and we are trying to engage and indulge in whether they are workshops, seminars, whether they are, speaking sessions, conferences. We have tried to reach out and try to engage everybody and be very transparent and open about what Milamos project is. So if you go to the Milamos website, you'll see news and events, and you'll see so many presentations that we have made from not just spacefaring nations, but also different countries from around the world. And we have tried to just put the word in so that at least the states and the stakeholders start to think about it. So while it's hard to say what the direct impact and what the real value is to the non-spacefaring states, but we have tried to include their views. We have tried to, if you know, we are still open on the McGill Manual website. We are still inviting comments that we can incorporate in the commentaries, right? Because the rules are frozen, there are consensus, but the commentaries are more fluid, and we are trying to invite and also include every comment that we see that is value in it, right? So we are making our best efforts possible to even reach to that tiniest nation which has never thought about space. But if it has a view and a valid question, we would try to engage that and incorporate that. So in terms of, it's not a conversation only about major spacefaring nations. We have really tried to broaden the horizons and try to include not only people but also views from really across the planet. the website, the MILAMOS website, which is on mcgill.ca/MILAMOS. You could also, if you are wanting to download a copy, you could download a copy of Volume 1 from this website and also from mcgillmanual.ca. If you're interested, you could also log in to mcgillmanual.ca and provide your comments on each of the rule statement. We have 52 rule statements ranging from, let's say, space activities to space resources to self-defense to harmful interference. We have a range of topics which, whatever may interest you, it's not necessary to comment on every rule, but anything that interests you, we are accepting and we are very welcoming of any comment that you can provide. We would try to incorporate that in the commentary. So mcgillmanual.ca and mcgill.ca/milamos is where you can read more about the Milamos project and the McGill manual, and also download free copies available on both of these websites. Yeah. And you could always write to me or David or Professor Jaku. I could talk endlessly about Milamos, but I mean, just as a conclusion, I would say wait for the commentaries. Don't judge the rules too soon. The rules are out there for you to read and comment on, so that if there are any views, we are trying to engage and be more participative from a public point of view. So please send those comments and wait for the commentaries. That is where the real meat is. But the 52 rules, trust me, it's not easy. It was not easy. They are the core of the manual and the crux of the law as it exists today. So there is a lot of importance on what the law is and how it is clarified. So this is a great resource, and the commentaries are going to be even greater resource for generations to come on space law, and hope that we are able to contribute to an international legal order and space activities conducted in accordance with them.